Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome to Storytelling Tarot. And this is HOODOOWEEN. I am so excited that you're with us tonight. I see we already have 3 people watching. Hey, everybody. If you are new here, welcome to Storytelling Tarot. And if you have been here for a while, hey, boo, welcome back. I have 30 people watching. I would love if I could have 30 likes. Can I get 30 people to like that button right now? Smash that thumbs up. Let people know that we're here. We want people to come in from far and wide because tonight is story time. I know that if you're a regular here that you're used to me doing divination and reading cards, but tonight we are telling stories, specifically African American folktales that are going to give us a little bit of a chill, going to cause us to think a little bit. And also, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I am super excited to be with you tonight. And I have some special guests with me. I'm going to bring them up so that we can get them warm and cozy. And we want to get started with the night. So let me get my notes. Before we get started, I want to see what's going on in the chat. Hey, y'all. Let me know where y'all watching from. Let's see. Let me get my chat up here. Nah, I lost the screen. I'm gonna find it. There we go. Okay, now I can see. Okay, I was like, where are my comments? All right, yes, so excited. Hello, Tariq. Hello, Brittany. So glad to see you. Foulette, welcome in. I see Harmony Phoenix is in the house. Okay, I see somebody coming in from ATL. That's where I'm from. So, hey, friend. Tariq Walker says, in Charlotte at Burger King. I know that's right. Okay, Pennsylvania. Happy HOODOOWEEN. Okay, Storytellers Book Club, welcome in. This is your type of event. We are glad to have you. I see Kia is watching in from New Orleans. Hello. We have Black Disenchanted in from Baltimore. We have Shar in from Portland, Oregon. Ooh, okay. Shout out to Alabama. I got Ken from there too. All right. Hey, Rory, welcome in. I see Mage in from Durham, North Carolina. The South got something to say tonight. I see y'all. Okay, we got somebody else from New Orleans. I see Astrology. Hey, how are you? Nisha's in here from Colorado. Storytellers Book Club said they've been waiting on this. HP said, you like the curls? Okay, got the hair out today. That's new for me. We have someone in, I hope, is it Tamara or Tamara? in from Austin, Texas. Hey, okay, Texas baby, we see y'all representing. Okay, I was like, where the people at? Okay, I see y'all pulling up. We love it. I was okay. Yeah. Rochester, New York. You made it. And hey, if you're joining in for the first time, make sure you let people know we're here. Get on Twitter. Formerly, we're not calling it the other name. Get on Twitter, let people know. Get on Instagram, wherever your socials are, let people know that we're here. I am going to bring on our special guest. I'm so excited. All right. Our first special guest is a good friend of mine, T. Angles, the founder of GMABBY Apothecary. T, who uses any pronouns, is a storyteller, tool creator, and diviner born in Dallas, Texas, to a lineage of midwives and root workers. In 2020, T and sibling Ian opened GMABBY Apothecary and released GMABBY's Black Gold Letterman, a hoodoo cartomancy deck. And if you are familiar with this channel, you know I use T's deck all the time on this channel. In 2022, it brought the sequel, which is what I actually just held up. This is the Black Gold Letterman 2. And in 2023, it's currently birthing GMABBY's 52 Blues. The name GMABBY comes from Toni Morrison's Beloved and is a tribute to the court of granny spirits and the living grannies that tether us to our sacred Black traditions. I want y'all to join me in welcoming my friend T. Angles. Woo! I should have had like applause, like sound effects. I don't think I have applause. Oh, wait, hold on. T, I'm so glad to have you here. How are you? How are you feeling? Are you ready for the night?
I'm ready. Can you hear me? I'm excited.
Yes, we can hear you. You sound good. I'm very excited. So, at the end of that bio, you talked about something called 52 Blues. Now, I've been talking about 52 Blues on this channel for about a month now. I'm really excited about it. So, can you tell us what is 52 Blues about before we get into the hoodooing of it all?
All right, so 52 Blues kind of is a little bit of a stepping away from Black joy and also just sort of other energies I used to try and channel. This one is really about Black grief, and this is really being a playing card deck. It's meant to bring folks together in ways of holding and collectively sharing and honoring that grief through the ages. So yeah, it just features a lot of Black spirits, Black saints, and holy sacred Black objects that just that are blue, that are Black and blue. So yeah, I can't wait to share it with y'all. Can't wait to listen to you.
And I don't know if you see the chat, but people are saying something. Look, Rory said that he went and backed the deck today. So I'm excited because the campaign has 2 days left. So we are about a little bit over halfway, right?
Yeah, we're like 56%. So it's just really we're in the midnight hours.
We are in the midnight hour, but that's as a hoodoo and as someone who grew up in the church, we know that late in the midnight hour, God can turn that thing around and it can work in your favor. So if y'all have been hearing what T has to say, if you've been following T on Instagram or any other platform, you know that 52 Blues is our story. It's a playing card deck that's round. I don't know if you've seen that before. I sure haven't, but I know I want it. My spirits want it. And if you want to make sure that we can get that deck, then you will go to Kickstarter. I will put the link in the chat in just a few moments. And so make it happen. We have 2 days, y'all. 2 days. It's all or nothing. So if you want to see this born into the world like I do, then I will make that link available. Actually, it's in the description. I don't have to put in the chat. Open up the description box and get into that. All right. You think we should bring up our next guest, T?
Yes.
All right. Let's get into it. Okay. So next we have Sara Makeba Daise, the Geechee gal Griot. Sara Makeba Daise, who uses pronouns she and her, is a Black, queer, 5th generation Gullah Geechee woman, griot, Afro-futurist, space and time traveler. Now listen, I feel a shout coming on before I even get there. Who? All right. Dimension hopper, diviner, gatekeeper, cultural history interpreter, writer, singer, and healer from Beaufort, South Carolina. Come on, somebody in the room. Sara is a daughter of storytellers, cultural bearers, and stars of Nickelodeon's Gullah Gullah Island, Ron and Natalie Daise. Sara furthers their legacy, unearthing new and old archives and weaving together timelines and dimensions. Sara works and plays at the intersections of ancestor elevation, intergenerational healing, Black queer erotics and desire, and African diasporic rituals, history, and culture. Come on. Her acclaimed 2020 essay, Be Here Now, The South is a Portal, explores the South as a portal for Africana and indigenous ways of knowing. Sara offers spiritual and ancestral counseling and works as an advisor and consultant on various creative projects involving Gullah Geechee and Africana heritage and culture, including films, plays, and novels. And as someone who I call my sister, for real, my friend in real life, please join me in welcoming Sara Makeba Daise. Hold on, let me get my. There we go. Sara, I am so excited that you're here. I'm so excited to be with you because we've been wanting to do this for a long time. I want you to know, like, people in the chat are like, yes, Sara is a daughter of storytellers. You got it honest. So a lot of people here know about Gullah Gullah Island. A lot of people know you were on the show. Like, you're not just the daughter of the stars. You were Shayna's best friend. And so I'm just excited because you played an adjacent role. You came in, you showed your beautiful curls and your plaits, but now mover and shaker. Did anybody else hear that bio with me? Mover and shaker. And so you produced something that was beautiful, that moves me to this day. And every time I read those words, it shakes something new. And that is when you penned, Be Here Now, the South is a portal. Tell me about what in the world you were conjuring. What was happening in your life and in your world when you wrote the South is a portal? Which, by the way, y'all quote the South is a portal, you better tag Sara Makeba Daise, because I've seen people say, I'm like, That was channeled straight from your ancestors through your mouth into that pen and paper. The South is a portal is a powerful statement. Tell me about where that came from and what it has done for you since you've written it.
God bless you. Firstly, just thank you, Jada. I'm so honored to be here with you and T. I'm so excited about T's project. And you just want people who gonna talk about you like you were talking about me just now. So that means so much to me, for real. The South is a portal, is a framework that honors the non-linearity of time, which is a reality that you cannot deny in the South. It is a framework that honors all of the ancestry, the wisdom, the knowledge, the joy, the pain, the experiences that enter the world through this portal. And it is the recognition that this is a site of so much oppression.
Yeah.
Because it is so potent, because the land is so potent, because the people and the rituals and the traditions and our relationship with the elements, when we are still enough to honor it, is so important. And so the South is a portal about remembering the remembering that the South encourages.
Yes. And I see in the comments that people are talking about, you had them at Time Traveler. We know you be in the liminal spaces. And okay. That was my phone. That was my phone saying yes. We want to hear that again. Yes, look in the comments. A lot of people know, baby, we grew up on it. Yeah, we grew up on that knowing. There's something very. Before I even met you, Sara, I met the South as a portal. And I was seeing the infograph going around, and I was like, oh, these words. And it was specifically about the stillness that the South calls for you to be still and to be present. And so I remember sharing that and being like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. And then I Googled and I was like, who is this? Who wrote this? And so I just want to thank you for giving us a new saying. I said it earlier, but um, um, we were given the South got something to say, years ago. And now you've given us the South as a portal. You've given us a new saying, a new reclamation of like that pride in the South. People are scared of the South sometimes. But you have showed us how it is a magical place. And I'm just so very grateful for you and your work. And I know it's going to pop up in our conversation tonight. So I'm super excited about that. I had something else I was going to say. I don't know, but I'm so excited to be here with y'all. I'm so excited to share this space. The people are excited. We have 59 people watching right now. Before we get into this, y'all, please like the video. I see 61 people present and 39 likes. If I could get 61, I just give me a little thumbs up. Let people know that we're here. We want people to show up and be present because story time is starting. I'm so excited to get into this. So we're actually going to start off with Sara. But before we do that, today is Halloween and it's also the last day of Hoodoo Heritage Month. So I want to know, because I know I'm sitting amongst Hoodoos and there are plenty of Hoodoos in the comments. I want to know what Hoodoo Heritage Month 2023 has meant to you both, or just what Hoodoo means to you.
You want to go first, T?
Yeah, okay. Wow. What this month has meant for me, what this Hoodoo Heritage Month has meant, it's meant for me sort of the reassurance that that this is my tradition, that this does belong to me and I play a part in it. I don't know if it's sort of the imposter syndrome that comes with a lot of reclamation and remembering, because we were taught for so long that it was wrong or other or made up. But yeah, this tradition and this month specifically, I have felt it. I have felt every moment of it, and I've had no choice but to use these tools and traditions. Like this is like there's no other way but this way, and so I feel a lot of gratitude too that my folks were able to make a way for me to stay in connection to what keeps me alive. What grounds me in myself, and what also connects me to just all these people who I don't even know, all the people, the hoodoos who are going to come into my life, but I feel them around me this month. And so I just yeah, it feels corny to say, but it just feels so real now. It just feels so real these times. I have no choice but to rely on this tradition to get by, and I'm grateful to have it and that it came into my life in time for me to have it. So
Ashe, that's powerful. Thank you for that, T. What about you, Sara?
I love that, T. I feel like similarly, this month has been very real. This is also the Geechee Heritage Month. And I've always felt, well, since I have begun to reclaim hoodoo as well, I have seen a lot of intersections and overlap. And so this month has felt so potent when you speak about the tools that are necessary, really prioritizing the rituals for our survival. And I feel like what I was sitting with for the last few days is being a technology and a vehicle again for our remembering, for coming back to ourselves, to remembering our wholeness and the truth that these systems make us forget. And I love also the yeah that it connects us with. It connects us with so many people we have yet to meet and people across time and space from every time. So I am also very grateful. And I always have to shout out Juju Bay because I feel like she ushered so many of us back to ourselves in this
Yes.
regard as it relates to hoodoo for real.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you named Jujube. Another name that comes up for me is Has Love, who also has been, at least for me, someone who has been, is an archivist and holding our stories and reminding us like this is yours, like Hoodoo is yours. So there are so many people I think that we could name, and
Mama Roo, we got to
mom,
shout out Mama Roo.
have to shout out Mama Ru, who is the reason why we have Hoodoo Heritage Month, who created it, and is the reason why we're gathering, is the reason why we're doing Hoodoooween in the first place. Like, there's just so many people who just allowed us to come home, to remind us that there was a home to come home to, that there was a place we could go. And yeah, I'm just very grateful. And so I think that this is going to be a beautiful night. It already is. And so I want to get started. So, y'all, we are going to run through 3 different sections tonight, 3 different types of stories. We're going to start off with the hag and the devil. We're going to move into some life lessons, and then we're going to finish out with some good old ghost stories. I promise they're not too scary. Might make you shiver a little bit, but you'll want to stick around because we have some really cool things to talk about during that time. I see some people in the chat are talking about Juju Bay and Has Love. Shout out to Jakendria, who has hosted many Hoodoo events just like this one. So thank you for being here. Mama Ru, our young elder for show. Absolutely. All right. So without further ado, I think we want to get started with our first topic of the night. Let's move into the hag and the devil. And we're going to start with a story read by Sara Makeba Daise, who will be reading Skin, Don't You Know Me? Take it away, Sara.
I am so thrilled to be a part of this production. Skin, don't you know me? This old witch used to tantalize people out in the country. They didn't know she was a witch, but every day there'd be something missing: diamonds, jewelry. She'd come in through a keyhole or a crack in the door. So this night she went to a big, fine castle, and a man, we'll call him Mr. John, he's just coming in from a party about 2:30 a.m. Everybody else is asleep. He looked and he saw a lady standing right at his doorstep. I'm just going to stand here and see what she's going to do. First, she reaches up, pulls her hat off, lays it down. She pulls off her shoes, and she also lays them down. She undresses, lays the clothes all in the same heap. He's seen her hands go up, and her skin begin to move upwards. Up it went, till it was about 5 feet in the air. Then it settled back to the ground. Nothing else moved. Oh, that's a curious sight. He goes up and examines the clothes. Huh, this is old Grandma Jane's clothes. What stays on the hill? Then he feels the skin. Hmm, I don't know what this is, but if it's moisture, I know how I'll find out. I'll get some pepper and salt and I'll put them on it. So he eased in the kitchen, gets his red pepper and salt, and sprinkles the hide good all over. Now I'll see what's going to happen. In a few minutes, he seen the skin begin to work. Next, he heard a whistle, and a voice said, "Skin, don't you know me?" The skin was so hot she couldn't get in it. 3 times he heard the whistle and burning. And "Skin, don't you know me?" Next thing the voice said was, "If you will wash this skin with soap and water, I'll give you all the diamonds and jewelry I've stolen from you. This is Grandma Jane." She had looked and saw him. Then he obeyed, washed it and soaped it and greased it good for her. And she was the same old Grandma Jane when she got back into her skin. Then she restored all their jewelry and became a poor old widow. That salt had taken away all her power of witchcraft. They claim that salt kills the power. It holds the dampness, and the witch can't never get enough power to work. Same thing with hypnotizing. Some people got more salt in their blood than others. And this comes from Richard M. Dorson, Negro Folktales and
Ooh. All right.
All
Skin,
right.
don't you know me? So let's pose a question to the audience. Who, by the way, there are some comments in here that I want to share. Storytellers Book Club says they put the speaker on so their ancestors could hear.
I love that.
Harmony Fetus says, shout out to them folks. And Bella Pearl says, Sarah's voice is so soothing. Let's move into the first question. I want y'all to answer this question too in the chat. Did you grow up hearing stories about hags and haints? And if you did, what did you know? What did you hear? What did they tell you? So I want to pose the same question to y'all. T, did you grow up hearing about hags and haints? Was that something that you talked about or heard about?
Yeah, I actually had, I'd always be around in my family or just, the family that's not really family, but their family. There was always some older kid who was trying to scare me and make me upset and wanted me to just, cry or, be in distress. So I remember there was this summer where there was this girl who was staying with my family. Her parents were staying with my parents, and she told me this story. We were staying by the sea, so of course she had to tell me a story about some what came out of the sea to get you in the night. So I grew up with stories like that that were specifically tailored to make me lament. Yes.
I feel like for me personally, I don't remember hearing specifically about haints and hags. I grew up very churchy with a lot of Christian people around me, but I do remember it being a thing about the witch riding you and like sleep paralysis being like the witch riding you. So I remember that. I think it was when I got older that I realized like, oh, this is a part of that story. Um, but I see here in the comments we have Eva says, I had sleep paralysis as a kid, so I heard about the boo hag who sat on your chest while you sleep. Yeah, absolutely. Bella Pearl says, no, I didn't find out about hags and hanks until a few years ago. So, yeah, this is probably fairly new for some people. Let's see, we have another one. It says, I remember those stories growing up, but didn't know they were haints or hacks per se. I've noticed with every story that haint is usually a woman. Hold on, I want to finish that. Usually a woman seeking some sort of revenge or is grief stricken. And then Cece says that they didn't learn about them until adult life. And a lot of people are saying, yes, definitely for sleep paralysis. So Sarah, I'm wondering, obviously you have shared with me off air that you heard these stories growing up a lot. So what did you hear or know about the hags and haints and why this story what was it appealing to you?
So I definitely grew up hearing about hags and hags, of course, in the low country and having the experiences of being ridden by hags. Also, my parents and my brother, shout out to my brother Simeon, are all storytellers. So that's a story that like was told around. around infrequently. I think a couple of years ago, I started thinking, I don't know who it was in the chat who talked about it. It's often a woman, it's often a scorned woman. But I started like thinking, why? Why do we not hear the perspective of the hag? What is this person doing? Why is this person feeling that way? So I actually asked my mom and brother if they had, and they had not considered either, what that experience might be. But I love this particular rendition because I think it's such a good example of, shout out to Supernova Mama Tosh, who's always saying misbehavior is communicating unmet needs.
Yes.
And I very much feel like this is evidence of that. This is this person's family member, and they're robbing the town. And it ends with this person's family member living the rest of her life in poverty. And I feel like we should be questioning why this man's grandmother was robbing the town. And I'm thinking, like, on a personal basis, how many systems and individuals have to have failed that person?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of my grandmother or an elder in the community I'm aware of that has to rob and steal. And I'm like, oh, look at them over there robbing and stealing, and
Yeah.
questioning myself. Also, the story that I grew up hearing said that somebody's a hag, or you can be suspicious that somebody is a hag if they have money and you don't know how they made the money. And why is it your business?
Yes.
It also is significant because it's such an in-house conversation. So I grew up hearing hags and haints as used interchangeably, but my understanding is a hag is a person who sheds their skin, like a living person like us, and haints are ghosts. And yeah, I just think there's really something for us to be considering. If we're talking about people in our Black community who needs are going so unmet, and we're pathologizing them as opposed to being like, well, how are we going to show up for these people who literally can't stay in their skin? Because I feel like if we really get in with ourselves for real, we can relate to getting the F out our bodies.
Yeah.
Because being in the body is just too much.
Yeah. And that is, you see how T and I both reacted. Like, that's a visceral reaction of like, who could not identify with that? Especially right now, we're living in real perilous times.
Come on.
And so to think about, I have to interrupt my own thought because this story really is so interesting. Because here's Grandma Jane coming into the town, and as you said in the story, has been robbing and stealing. Why did it take so long for Grandma Jane to get to her own family's house? That was the last resort. And so, what does it mean for people in our families to live a particular struggle and for us to be the last resort? How can we make sure that they don't have to go to those measures? And then, how can we empathize then and see the humanity in the hag? That's what I think is very, very touching about that story, and infuriated me a little bit because, like, you, even after the grandson recognized, oh, that's Grandma Jane. I saw Grandma Jane get back into the skin. You didn't go after her. You didn't say, Grandma, wait, what's going on?
He got a whole castle.
He had a
He lives in a
castle.
castle.
She moved into live in desolation, and it was like, oh, okay, well. And so I just like, this is such this story, like, it requires a call to action almost. Like, is, the hag and the haint has been these caricatures that we have been fearful of. but what are the stories that we need to hear from them? Um, I know that for you, Sara, this is a big part of, I think, in part because you grew up hearing the stories, and also just in all of what we're talking about right now, and the humanizing and bringing um, more context to the story. It's not so scary when you realize, oh, this is a person in need. It's very much so Five of Pentacles for those who are familiar with tarot. It's like the hag or the grandmother in this story is someone who has a need and is just looking for somebody to help. And I just want to know, for you, what are the questions that come up for you as you're reading these stories? Yes, you, Sara.
I didn't know if it was another for the viewers. So I'm thinking about haints and hags being used interchangeably, and
Mm-hmm.
thinking about them distinctively as a haint, as a spirit. Um, I think an unelevated spirit. I think a person who has transitioned but has not been grieved and mourned in a way that allows them to pass over. I remember reading in Aladoma Some's book on ritual about him visiting an apartment and seeing a woman at the sink in the apartment with a knife in her chest, and he was like viewing an empty apartment, and the person who was showing him the apartment did not see this person bleeding out at the sink. And he, Maladoma, very matter of factly was like, yeah, it was a spirit, and her family failed her, and like they
Mm-hmm.
didn't do what they needed to do for her to transition. And I think about all of the folks we have, all of the folks, all of the things, all of the places, all of the experiences that we have not been able to grieve.
Yeah.
Why tools like the ones he is creating are so important, because all these systems of oppression rob us of the rituals needed for us to live, rob us of the rituals needed for our ancestors to pass over and continue to support us. And I think similarly, thinking about the hag as like the living dead, or someone who wishes they were dead, or just does not want to stay in the physical body, speaks to both the need for personal elevation, like, or re-elevation,
Yes.
and community, like you said, call to action. Because those things are more relatable than we allow ourselves to realize, that we can see ourselves in them. And particularly in South Carolina, in the South, going back to haints and spirits, there are so many sites of trauma, and just people we have not been given the time to honor in the ways that they need, in the ways that we need. And that's what feels super evident in this story.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that share. I see in the comments folks are naming Ancestor Doris Payne, who I love how Punchy says it, a jewel connoisseur, and was cleaning them folks out for decades, 6 decades. Um, who would have likely been like Grandma Jane in this story. Um, I love what you say about elevation. We're going to talk a little bit more about elevation. But before we do, let's move on to. Oh, I see a question. I have to. This discussion about haints and hags remind me of two books, Precious and the Boo Hag by Onowumi Jean Moss and Patricia C. McKissick, and Root Magic by Eden Royce. Oh yeah, we are Eden Royce fans up in here. So absolutely. Thank you for those resources. We are going to move on to our next story. T is going to lead us in Louis Alexander.
Hey y'all. Tonight I'll be reading Louis Alexander from the Book of Negro Folklore. Louis Alexander. In the old days when the devil taught the fiddlers, we had much better music than we have now. Jack Calhoun was a fine fiddler, but Louis Alexander was finest of all. Some say he was taught by Dicky Brew, the great conjure man on Dorchester Road. Some say the devil taught him. Old Caesar says he was taught by the devil, not by Dicky Brew. No man could fiddle like Louis Alexander unless he had been taught by the devil. Louis was a Charleston man, short-bodied, heavy, and dark. He was a pleasant fellow, friendly with all, jovial, and fond of a joke. And he could play the fiddle as if he had been born with a fiddle in his hands. There never has been another fiddler like Louis Alexander. He could play equally well the banjo, guitar, or bull fiddle. He could play a lead horn fit to make a man cry. But with his fiddle, he could almost conjure your heart out. When white folks heard Louis Alexander play, they always said, "The devil is in that man." They called him the Black Pickaninny. One who wants to learn to play from the devil must take a yellow yam, a hen egg, and a black fowl to the crossroads in the dark of the moon, stake the fowl, break the egg, lay the yam down in the egg, and call the devil 7 times. He will come on the 7th call. Louis did these things so, then called the devil. There was the devil, sitting on a burnt gum stump. "What do you want?" says he. "To play the fiddle better than any man, alive or dead," said Louis. "I will pay whatever you ask." "That's a fair bargain," said the devil, and taught Louis how to play the fiddle better than any man, alive or dead. "Thank you," said Louis. "Just keep your thanks," said the devil. "I will take my own pay." After that, no man could play the fiddle like Louis Alexander. He could play a whole tune on one note or a whole song on one string, and when he played for dancing, everyone that heard him had to dance. They could not keep their feet still. When Louis played, the devil was in it. The women sang at the top of their voices, and the dancers sang tunes that could only come from the devil. The women all pushed around him like cows, butting to be next. Louis just scratched their heads with his fiddle bow. Women were about as pleasing to him as a house full of smoke. The men whooped and hopped and jumped. They forgot their troubles and all their cares. The girls were pretty, drink was free, and everyone might have his fill. They just whooped it up all night. Every minute the party got louder. With buckets of white mule and bottles of beer, the girls pulled their clothes off, and everything was delightful. And nobody who came into the hall ever left it, from candle lighting on Saturday night to sunrise Sunday morning. They forgot how to use the door. And never once, the whole night long, would Louis ever skip a beat or lose the time. He fiddled like the devil himself, and the devil never loses any time. Everybody had a pig's fill till the first dong of the old church bell put an end to the doing. Louis gave a hot supper every Saturday night, and every Sunday morning after Louis's hot supper, somebody got carried home, dead. At the dong of the bell, Louis laid down his fiddle, and when he laid down his fiddle, the party was over. They all went home. They forgot where they had been, or what they had done, or how they had behaved themselves. All they knew was that they were too tired to go to work, so they went home and slept all day. Nobody went where he was hired, or where anybody expected him to be, and nobody cared a damn. The devil was in Louis Alexander's music, but Louis laughed and kept his secret. After a while, he went down to Beaufort and got him a fine string orchestra there. The people in Beaufort and Port Royal welcomed so famous a fiddler and took the opportunity to have hot suppers and dances. And as it had been in Charleston, it was in Port Royal and Beaufort. People hailed Louis Alexander as the greatest of all fiddlers, dead or alive. But a gift from the devil is a debt in the end. Louis lived many years in Beaufort. His house was on the point, behind Beaufort, a solitary place. One day the apothecary missed Louis, who went every day by the apothecary shop. "What's become of Louis Alexander?" he asked. Nobody knew, so they went to the lonely house on the point where Louis had lived. When they opened the door, there was Louis dead, in a heap on the bed, like the old song says. There lay Louis stretched on the bed, shoe on his feet, and a hat on his head, and a stink like the devil behind him. Louis lay there on the bed, stiff, his eyes wide open, staring, and his mouth twisted. His face was gray as an alley cat at night, and there was white froth on his lips. The look on Louis Alexander's face was not that of a sweet, and quiet death. Joe Bythewood said that there had been a light in Louie's house all night. The oil in his lamp was burnt out, the wick was charred to the brass, and the brass was burnt black. The soot from the burnt wick had fallen like snow on everything. Louie's face was covered with it, and the bedding. Some say he died of poison from the foam on his lips, but the law couldn't prove it. Nobody believed it, and nobody believes it to this day. The devil, who had taught him to fiddle, had come for his pay, and willy-nilly, ready or not, he just took Louis Alexander's soul and went home. On the table by the bedside were pen, ink, and paper, a regular contract paper, and across the back of the paper, in a big sprawl hand, showing that it had been written by a big man, were the 3 words, paid in full. Nobody could have written that but the devil, as told by Walter Mayran.
Woo! Paid in full. That's a story for that ass. Louis Alexander, thank you, T, for reading that so captivatingly. I have a question for the audience. I see the comments have been jumping. I want to know, y'all, drop me a comment. What immediate feelings or reactions come up for you after hearing this story? After hearing the words paid in full? After all of it? Drop me some comments. Let me know. There were some people in the chat saying that they were hadn't heard the story in a while and that it was good to hear it again, and that people are like, I need it. Yes, for those who are asking, this is in the Book of Negro Folklore. Yes. Yes, dang, Louie. Yes, Foulette says they like the story. The story was everything. So what's coming up for you, Sara? What's coming up for you as you're thinking about this story and the way that oh, I love this response. Choices. That's what's coming up for. Is it Saudade? Saudade? Choices is what's coming up for them as they're holding that story. What comes up for you, Sara?
I think like what comes up for me is stuff we've talked about in previous conversations, just the way that the devil shows up in our stories, in our narrative, the the power that we give him, and the power, uh, just the ways that we interpret the power that we have based in and around this concept of this figure. I think I was just appreciating this particular position, and yeah, sitting with what it would sound like to hear the devil in the music, because I know
Yes.
that sound good.
You know it sounded good. They were having a
Yeah.
good time. And Louis over there patting them girls with the head because Louis was not interested in these women whatsoever. Not at all. Louis just wanted to be the light, really.
Mhm.
Wanted people to be drawn to him. And I love that. Some of the comments are saying that this story was coming up for them as the 7 of Cups. I really love that. Yeah. I can see that, the 7 of Cups being many options, many things, and even illusions and dreams, right? We also have intrigue, power, and caution. Caroline says, I used to live in Charleston, so it was good to hear about Dorchester Road and South Carolina specific things. Also, the importance of cosmic balance. Yes, because the devil will come and get. Nothing ain't free. Nothing's free. Then we have, it's striking to hear the devil connected to talent or lighting you up, making you captivating. Even the devil in the Bible, they say, was the minister of music. And so that's why we be, gyrating and all of that, because the devil's in that. I love that. As much as they kept saying only the devil can make you, it's so good the devil's in it. They never said, oh, only God, only what could be considered holy makes this good. They were like, this is so addictive. This is the devil, which could also tie into the devil card in tarot as well. But this thing has such a hold on me. It's gotta be a demon. It's gotta be. Eva says the devil never loses time was interesting. Maybe the death was timely. Johnny says, for me, it's a new take on the idea that the gift is the wound. I've never thought about the devil from that perspective. Yeah, Rory says stories about consequences and payments, how not to be quick to agree to things without knowing what you'll be paying the thing with. Yes. Pie Universe says it's reminding me a little bit of the ring card and the Grandma Baby deck. Hi, Praise. Because, Grandma Baby's deck always going to come around. Foulette says it's the contrast of death and joy. I'm laughing at y'all talking about this pat on the head. So many wonderful comments. I have to share this one. This is Miss Natalie Daise in the chat. Miss Natalie said, I think of how often people are distrustful of mastery of a gift. Yes, 100%. I love that. So we're going to read another devil story. This one read by yours truly. I'm going to put this, I've been reading along. This story, because we're going to talk a little bit more about the devil. This story is called The Jack of My Lantern, which I think is a little fitting for Halloween night. The Jack of My Lantern. Jack sold himself to the devil at the crossroads one night at 12 o'clock. For 7 years, all power was given to him to do as he pleased. But at the end of that period, his soul belonged to the devil. Old Satan called for him, but Jack was ready. He had tacked a piece of old shoe sole up above the door and asked the devil to get it for him. The devil stood in a chair and reached for it. Jack then took out a hammer and nailed the devil's hand fast, slipping the chair out from under him. Upon a promise of his freedom, Jack then released old Satan. Finally, Jack died. He went up to heaven, but those in charge would not let him in. So he went down to hell, but the devil threw a chunk of fire at him and told him he was too smart for hell. Jack, deprived of a dwelling, was forced to pick up the chunk of fire and to spend all his time wandering about the earth, luring people into swamps and mud holes at night. The end. This is from Folk Beliefs of the Southern Negro, and it is found in the Annotated African American Folktales. So I have a question I want to hear in the chat about these stories. And it can be Louis Alexander and the Jack of My Lantern combined. And the question is, what role did the devil play in your household, your family, culture, and faith traditions? Oh, Satan, what role did he play? T, I want to know from you, did the devil play any role? Do y'all talk about the devil at all?
Yeah, I think it wasn't until I got older and my family was very religious and I was sheltered when I was younger. I went to a religious school to begin with. And I remember the devil and fear of the devil really was brought out when one of my cousins was gay. And it was love the sinner, hate the sin. And it was just seeing my family distraught, like, how did this happen to us? How did this happen to him? And just, something that took him away from, where people had expected or imagined him to be with them. So I saw the devil as like this. Actually, I take that back. I remember when I started getting into Pokemon, my parents were like, those are devils, and they lead children away from their families. They go battle with these devils and their little devil balls in a stadium. So you take those cards and you throw them in the trash because it's devils. So it's usually anything that leads you, I guess, outside of the safety of community. And I think families feel helpless when there are members of their family who live at an intersection, a crossroad, an identity where they can't protect them from this anti-Black, transphobic, queerphobic world. And the only way to name that force sometimes is to say that force is the devil. But I think in this space we can safely and correctly name it as the cost of colonialism, of white patriarchal supremacy, saying that, you know, we have no value beyond what it gives us. This man had to seek the crossroads and seek the devil to be able to be in community. And then we saw, as soon as he stopped fiddling, he goes to this lonely house, this empty house. And he dies there, and he dies silently in the night. And his death is never solved. We're just told it was the devil. So that's sort of too much to answer that question. Some of that was rambling.
No,
but
that was good.
that's where that thought took me.
Yeah, I am thinking about how I'm getting ahead. I'm getting ahead. Sara, what do you have to say about the devil? Was that something that a concept or a person or a being that you knew about, talked about growing up at all?
Not really. So my father's family was largely Baptist. My mom's family was largely Seventh-day Adventist, but I think my parents did not want us to be afraid of the devil. So while that was around me, that was not something that we were brought up to fear. I really appreciated your reflections, T. And as you were sharing that last story, Jada, I was remembering the other question that we had talked about as it related to the hag.
Yeah.
It made me think of, you know, that James Baldwin interview where he's talking to that white person. He's basically like, "You're asking me about a nigger. You need to ask yourself. You know, you invented the nigger. You tell me what you needed this creation for." And similarly,
Yes.
the hag, or even the way that T just incredibly described these systems of oppression that we find ourselves impacted by, like who benefits from the ways that we contextualize it, who
Yes.
benefits from how we tell the story about the man whose only option was just to drag people into the swamp.
Yeah.
Because as T pointed out when we met prior to this live, like he didn't have no home nowhere. There was nowhere for him to go, and it's easy enough to be afraid
Mm-hmm.
of the person who has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
we can decide how we tell those stories that yeah, make ourselves okay with the choices or lack thereof we've had to make to survive these violent systems
Mm.
and try to be whole.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about Louis Alexander being at home alone, and even though all these people were like, what they say, like even in the Bible, how people used to throng against Jesus and be like, "Oh, Jesus," da, 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 da. But they all turned on Jesus. And so Louis Alexander, who has this gift, and everybody wants to be around, and everybody's clothes coming off, and everybody's having a good time, and he still died alone. And then you have Jack in this story, who, I love this first line. It says, "Jack sold himself to the devil at the crossroads one night at 12 o'clock." There's no backstory. We don't know why. There's no motive. That's where it starts for Jack. I sold my soul. But something, and as a novelist and a storyteller, we always know that there's something before page one. There's something that caused him, and those of us who are hoodoos, we know that tonight is Man of the Crossroads night. Not to say the Man of the Crossroads is the devil, but Jack went to the crossroads, and the devil is who met him. And I think that what is most like that stands out to me the most about Jack's story is like what T was saying and what Sara just reiterated, that this feels like our blues as we talk about T and the 52 blues. As Black people in this country, and really honestly anywhere that's been colonized, where we don't have a place to belong, Jack outsmarted the devil. Jack got what he wanted from the devil. When it came time to pay due, he was like, "Actually, nah. Actually, I'm more cunning than this." It was really giving hoodoo. And so when it came time to pay, he's like, "Yeah, go get that thing for me." And now you got the devil by a chokehold. But even heaven was like, no, because we can't trust your kind. And hell's like, you beat Satan, we don't trust your kind. And so you beat the oppressor and you don't find grace with those who are supposed to be the most holy, the most right, the most moneyed, the most light, the most able-bodied, the most cis hetero. They don't accept you either. And so Jack decides, I'm just going to haunt people then. This is what I'm going to do. And so we would be scared of Jack, but who put Jack there? And I think that is such a stark image of Black blues. A part of what T is putting in the deck, make sure you go back it on Kickstarter. But a big part of that, T, I'm wondering, oh, I love this. Yes, Foulée. I didn't say it, but you said it. It's very Seven of Swords. Very, I'm not going to show all my cards. But I'm pretty sure that Jack knew, oh, I know how to get over this. I know what I'm going to do. T, as we're talking about Black blues before we move on to the next segment, what are your thoughts on that? Because we've been quoting you the whole time. What are your thoughts about Black blues and how it can, what aspects of the devil or what's evil do you think is a part of what has been our blues?
Yeah, I sort of feel there's like two things to say about that. Like I think you know, we hear very on in this story, like, who were the first ones to call Louis Alexander the devil? Who were the first ones to reference the devil? And so that makes me want to step back and say, like, you know, like maybe the devil has a different name. For us, the devil has followed us around since colonization.
Yeah.
We had so many different names that encompassed that court of spirits. So many different reasons why they did what they did for us, not to us. The only real devil we can logically claim in that story, in that context, would be the one who set us up to be unpeopled, dehumanized. But yeah, the blues, I guess, it's sort of, the blues is the crossroads where we meet this figure who promises to transmute, to change, to uplift, to I like to say to some of my divination clients, like, the crossroads is where the child's need meets a solution, meets an answer, meets a call. It's call and response. That's a crossroads. So I like to say that that's what our blues are. It's us crying in the night, in a hush harbor, at a road, in our houses, sometimes at work, sometimes in the car. It's us crying out, like, God, do you hear me? In a world where it's not that we're silent or silenced really, but people literally look away from our pain. People look away unless, like Louis, we can make it presentable or entertainment. So there are cards about dances, cards about juke joints. There are cards where people are seized with the spirit in church. Like, there are so many moments where we find the call and response and the problem and the solution meeting. So I guess that's Black blues, that we found the solution, and only people seem to only conceive of it as the devil, or as the ghetto, or as the knicker. I don't know if I can say it on YouTube.
You
But
just did.
yeah, I'm sorry, YouTube. I'm not
You
sorry,
good.
YouTube. But our blues is so expansive. That's why I mean, it's more than 52 cards actually, because there's also two jokers and a secret card. But it could be more than that, because we have so much language and so many tools and so many technologies. Like, it's amazing. And it's the only way, like I said, that people can conceive of just the expansiveness that is us in our response to a world like this, is to say, the devil,
Mm-hmm. I love this comment that I just put on the screen. Devil also a binaristic colonial creation. He's the big bad while God is all good. And our trickster spirits have more nuance than just good or bad and cannot be contained in binaries. And that's why I think that Jack o' my lantern hits like that, because Jack was smart. Jack should have been rewarded, not shunned. But if it's like you have to be all over here or all over there, where those binary places, heaven and hell, didn't have a place. And so he ended up in that liminal space. But because of the rejection, I think that is why Jack was like snatching hoes. You know? And so what would happen then instead if it had been like, even if old Satan was like, I can learn something from you, Jack. I didn't expect that, Jack. I don't know. There's more to that. And I appreciate what you're sharing about our blues, because, yeah, there's so much more. The intersection of meeting the need and the solution, I think that's powerful. I love that. So thank you for that, T. We're going to move on to our next session for the night, which is life lessons. I am going to open up life lessons by reading this story called Jack and the Black Snake. Did I say Jack? I meant John. John and the Black Snake. One time, John went down to the pond to catch him a few catfish. He put his line in the water, and cause the sun was warm, John began to doze off a little. Soon as his head went down a little, he heard someone calling his name. John, John, like that. John jerked up his head and looked around, but he ain't see nobody. 2-3 minutes after that, he heard it again. John, John. He looked to one side. He looked to the other. He looked down at the water. And he looked up in the air. And after that, he looked behind him and saw a big old black snake sitting on a stone pile. Who been calling my name? Says John. Me, the black snake tell him. It's me that called you. John didn't feel too comfortable talking to a black snake, and he felt mighty uneasy about a black snake talking to him. He say, what you want? Just called your name to be sociable, black snake tell him. John looked all around to see was anybody else there. How come you picked me to socialize with? Well, black snake say, you's the only one here. Besides that, John, ain't we both black? Let's get it straight, says John. There's two kinds of black, yours and mine, and they ain't the same thing. Black is black, say Black Snake, and I've been thinking on it quite a while. You might say as we is kin. That was too much for John. He jumped up and sold out, went down the road like the Cannonball Express. And coming down the road, there was a wagon with Old Boss in it. Old Boss stopped and wait till John get there. He say, John, I thought you was down to the pond fishing for catfish. John looked over his shoulder and said, I was, but I ain't. Old Boss say, John, you look mighty scared. What's your hurry? John say, Old Boss, when black snakes get to talking, that's when I get to moving. Now, John, Old Boss say, you know that black snakes don't talk. Indeed, I know it, John say, and that's why in particular I'm a-going, because this here black snake is doing what you say he don't. 'Pears to me you been in that liquid corn again, Old Boss say. I'm disappointed in you, John. You let me down. It ain't no liquid corn, John say. It's worse than liquid corn. It's a big old black snake sitting on a rock pile down by the pond. Well, Old Boss say, let's go take a look. So Old Boss went with John back to the pond, and Black Snake was still there sitting on the stones. Tell him, John say to the Black Snake, tell Old Boss what you told me. But the Black Snake just sat there and didn't say a word. Just speak up, John say. Tell him what I hear before. Black Snake didn't say a word, and Old Boss tell John, John, you got to stay off that corn. I'm mighty disappointed in you. You should let me down. After that, old boss got in his wagon and took off. John looked mean at the Black Snake. He say, Black Snake, how come you make me a liar? Black Snake say, John, you sure let me down too. I spoke with you and nobody else. And the first thing you do is go off and tell everything you know to a white man. The end. This is from Harold Corlander, A Treasury of Afro-American Folklore. Woo child. Woo child. There's a lot in that. As soon as I can get my book closed, I will ask our first question, but I see that we had some comments here. Let's ask the first question. Let's get people involved. The first question that we have here is, how can we be more present with the land and ourselves? And I want to ask this question because, as I was reading this story the first couple times, I thought about us. I think about us as people and like how I'm going to get to validation because that's a really big part of this. But I think about us in the land and nature and spirits and the spirit encounters that we have. There are a lot of hoodoos in the room, spiritual people in the room. And this is very much so about nature interacting with us and us interacting with nature. And so I thought about how there are so many times when we are like having these encounters like John did with the Black Snake, where we go and then try to capture it with our phones or monetize it or put it on social media. And so that's why I wanted to ask that question. How can we then become in better relationship with the land and ourselves, where it's not about being seen, but being still, as Sara says, and the South is a portal. Sara, what do you have to say?
First, you read that wonderfully. Also, LOL at Astrality saying Black Snake said you ain't no diva.
Let me put that on the screen.
We should all get the reference.
I was trying not to laugh because the comments were going in. I'm going to share those now. All skinfolk and kinfolk.
But I thought what you said was such a great point, Jada, about how we can be experiencing something, we can be present, we can be recognizing a new gift. That's something I think about a lot. Like a new gift is coming online for me, and the first thing I want to do is be like, girl, guess what happened to me? As opposed to just being with it. Yeah. Just feeling it out, just receiving like, oh, this download maybe was just for me. Like the snake was saying, this was just for you. And what's also coming up for me is I quote the soulmates a lot. I love Malidoma and Sabon Soulmate. And yes. He talks about of Water and the Spirit, the experience of initiation, where essentially the assignment was to just see a tree. Like the elders was like, you need to see it. And when you see it, let us know. And he was impatient. Eventually he made something up, and the elders like, nah, that's not, you ain't see that. And he had to sit and wait. Like he described the sweat pouring in his eyes and everything. He's there for hours, and eventually he sees the tree. And like a green woman. It's like that character, or that being Moana, that's what I envision when I read that story. And I think also about seeking is a Gullah Geechee, and I would say a hoodoo practice. When desiring to join the community, you had to go out into the woods and the clearing in the bush to seek God, to seek the divine. And the way we just so rushed now. Yeah. And again, speaking to the validation, the way we just we want somebody else to say, yeah, you are really magical. I'm talking to myself. You are really magical. But yeah, there's just so much magic around us. So I think about being more present with the land is just acknowledging that, for acknowledging that there's so much magic around us, and I imagine then the snakes will speak because they
Yeah.
got stuff to say,
Yeah.
as do the trees and everybody else.
Yes. I think, well, first, let me kick it to you, T. What do you think about how we can be more present with the land and spirit encounters instead of rushing to, you know, look for validation? How can we be more present? Or how are you more present?
Yeah, I think, and sometimes in my experiences in nature and the land, I find that I'm surprised at how the land or nature might anticipate my needs before I'm even willing to acknowledge them to myself, let alone vocalize them out loud. Um, like the rain that comes exactly when I need it. Like on a walk, I'll stumble across the perfect clearing to pause in or a body of water to sit beside. Um, but it's really hard. I think being present with the land also requires me to override and lose some parts of me that were built in survival mode when trying to survive this world. Like, I've had to do some public offerings or public works. And there's been like some businessman on his lunch break in a suit on a cell phone. And I've heard, the water asking me, like, just leave what you have for me, like, and it will be okay. And I do it, and I feel the sense of peace. And like suddenly, like a duck will swim up to the offering or something. Like it
Yes.
requires me to, one of the offerings or the sacrifices that I have to make in that moment is also um, the fear that that whiteness is somehow bigger than nature, and whiteness is somehow bigger than spirit. Because in truth, it's not. It is loud and it is terrifying and it is very violent. But what we have is so much bigger. So I've been learning to trust that.
Mm, I love that. I love that. And that's exactly what John didn't understand. Because first John othered the snake, say, we're two different kinds of black though. You're one kind of black and I'm a different kind of black. And I think that was like very like loud, like, oh my goodness. And it's the breakdown, it's our desire to be seen by whiteness, to be validated by whiteness, that keeps us from each other, that keeps us from the land, that keeps us from spirit and connection in an intimate way, right? And so that connection is, listen, people in the chat are like, T be preaching, and do walking very heavy. I think that um, that really stood out to me because how much more powerful would the story have been if John just sat there and talked to the snake? What was the snake going to share? That was a test. By just calling the name and saying, I'm talking to you because we're the same. We are the same. We are of the same spirit. It was John who cut it off and was like, actually, we're not. And I'm going to go and let someone else come in and look at this experience to like make sure that I am not losing it. Because you would rather let somebody else come in and oversee than for you to sit in and experience how you are the same and how that's not a negative thing. It's a beautiful thing. And so I think that that is what was sitting with me for true, and how we should not be running, especially to certain people who have perceived or actual power to validate this. That's why we say like hoodoo is ours. Hoodoo is ours. And this connection with spirit and the land is super important, especially now. I had other questions, but we have so many other stories to go, and time is going already. So let's move on to our next story, which is going to be Little Muddy Waters.
All right, I'm going to be reading Little Muddy Waters, which is a Gullah folk tale by my daddy, Ronald Daise. Now, Little Muddy Waters was one good looking, dark skinned boy. He was dark and dashing, just like an African prince. Little Muddy Waters was good looking, just like all the other dark skinned boys on St. Helena Island. But there was something just a little bit different about him. That boy was, now there's just no other way to say it, hard headed. He got into everything, and he did everything that he was told not to do. Grandma Waters tried to teach him all the things that he should know. She wanted him to be a good little boy, and she taught him to mind his manners. But little Muddy Waters thought most things his grandma told him were the funniest things he had ever heard. He would just laugh and laugh and laugh. It was getting more and more difficult for Grandma and Big Papa Waters to raise such a don't listen to anybody, do whatever he wanted to little child. And they weren't just raising little Muddy Waters either. They also kept his older sister and his younger brother. Respect your elders and do what's right, Grandma would tell them. And don't comb your hair outdoors. No, 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 now. If you do, birds will get it. And if a bird gets your hair and makes a nest with it, you'll get headaches. Real bad headaches. Little Muddy Waters just laughed at his grandma's words. Then he said politely, "Why, ma'am, I won't comb my hair outdoors." And he told the truth. He did not comb his hair outdoors. But what he did do was take his grandma's hair out of the trash can. She had pulled the loose hairs out of her comb and nicely rolled them up inside some tissue paper. He carried that ball of hair into the woods, and then he dropped it right in the middle of a bird's nest. When the mama bird started making a nest with that old woman's hair, Grandma Waters got a headache so bad she fainted. Little Muddy Waters came home and saw his grandma holding her head. That bird must have been building a nest for truth, he thought. And then he just laughed and laughed. Respect your elders and do what's right, Grandma Waters said. Don't laugh at people when you see they hurt. You gonna remember what I say? Before Grandma Waters finished talking, Little Muddy Waters' sister walked in and put a wet towel on the old woman's head. His brother started fanning Grandma with a folded newspaper. Little Muddy Waters, however, looked on silently for a few minutes. He never answered his grandma. He just walked away. A few days later, when Grandma Waters was feeling better, she found Little Muddy Waters and pulled him aside. Respect your elders and do what's right, she said. Now listen to me good. Don't you walk out of someone's house from a different door than the one you came in, or you'll bring a heap of bad luck on that family. As soon as his grandma was out of sight, Little Muddy Waters crept out the front door. He turned right around and ran straight through that house and right on out the back door. And this was his own home. Did bad luck strike? Little Muddy Waters' sister was cooking in the kitchen when she accidentally cut herself in two places with a butcher knife. Now, Big Papa knew exactly what to do. He pulled down some spider webs from a corner of the kitchen ceiling. He pushed them inside one of those cuts. The other was a little bit deeper, though. So Big Papa made a mixture of some mashed up soap and sugar and pushed it inside. And the bleeding stopped, just like he knew it would. But that was not all the bad luck that came on that family. Little Muddy Waters' brother got the mumps. His throat was sticky, sore, swollen, and painful. And on top of that, he got a fever so high, the boy was just about delirious. Was he a sight? His grandparents had laid some salted pork skin on a strip of cloth. The meat was resting against his throat, and the cloth was tied atop his head. Big Papa told him he had to walk around like that until the swelling in his throat went down. When he got the high fever, Big Papa went out into the woods looking for something, the oil bush plant. He found it and brought home some of those wide green leaves. He laid them on the little boy's chest and thighs. Grandma Waters gave him some life everlasting tea with honey. Then she sent him to bed. She wrapped him up under 5 heavy homemade quilts to sweat that fever out. Grandma Waters started worrying. She worried about her sick grandson. She watched her granddaughter's hand heal. And she worried about how such an accident could have happened to a child who was always so careful. She wondered if someone had done something to bring all this bad luck and misery on the family. Everybody said no, except Little Muddy Waters. Now, he knew something about everything that had happened, but he didn't say a word about anything to anybody. He didn't even act sorry about anything. Uh, uh, uh. One day, soon after that, Grandma Waters was at her wits' end about Little Muddy Waters' silence whenever she asked questions, about how he always showed up soon after something bad had happened, about how that boy was always laughing when others felt sad, and always laughing whenever she told him something important. Listen, you hard-headed boy. Respect your elders and do what's right. Don't you never, ever sass old people. Treat them nice. Or they'll give you the eye and put the mouth on you. Then you'll really be in a fix. Little Muddy Waters just said, Early the next morning, he went on a walk. He came across Old Man Weaver walking down the road with a pipe in his mouth. Weaving shrimp nets had been the man's job during his younger days. That's why he was called Weaver. But his younger days had long gone. Now his face was as wrinkled as a hound dog's hide, and his eyes were glassy and gray. Gray, just like the Spanish moss that hangs from St. Helena Island trees. Old Man Weaver always walked around with a little bag tied around his neck. That bag was filled with sulfur and garlic and bad smelling herbs. He said it was to keep away evil spirits, but it kept anybody away who came too close. Little Muddy Water smelled the contents in that bag from afar off. He covered his nose. He smiled and said, "Good morning, sir." The old man studied the young boy up and down. He saw a space between the boy's 2 front teeth, so he said, "Boy, why you lie so much?" "I don't tell lies," Little Muddy Waters answered. "I do not." "Yeah, you do, boy," Weaver shouted. "Why, your teeth tell the story." The old man chuckled. Then he added, "You got the liar's gap, son. That's what your teeth say." "Mm-hmm." "They do not," Little Muddy Waters whispered. Then, underneath his breath, he sassed. "Why, you stink, old wrinkle bag of bones." "What you say?" Old Man Weaver interrupted. "Nothing," Little Muddy Waters lied. "I didn't say nothing at all." Well, that made the old man's blood run hot. He started closing one eye. and pointed a finger in Little Muddy Water's direction. He was getting ready to put the mouth on that boy, to fix him, to make something happen to him that he'd never forget. Old man Weaver probably would have stopped if Little Muddy Waters had told the truth and said he was sorry. But Little Muddy Waters didn't remember Grandma's good advice. Weaver started speaking in a whisper. So you don't know how to respect your elders, huh? He said. Then his voice got louder and louder. Why, you ain't nothing. You ain't come from nothing. And if this day don't bring a good change in you, you ain't gonna mount to nothing. Mark my word. Then he slowly turned around and slowly walked away. Little Muddy Waters thought the old man had acted real strange, but he wasn't worried. He chuckled as he watched old man Weaver leave. Change something about me? He murmured silently. I don't have to change nothing about me. You better change what you got in that bag, old man. Ha 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 ha. Then he turned around and skipped on home. When he got there, he curled up on his front porch and went to sleep. But by and by, the old man's strange sounding words came true. 'Cause there, right there on the front porch where that little boy had gone to sleep curled up like a little ball, was a little ball of moss, gray, just like the old man's eyes. Grandma Waters saw it when she came outside. She said, well, great day. My head to hurt and I need to walk. This moss is just what I need to put in my shoes to bring down my pressure. So she put Little Muddy Waters, she put that ball of moss inside her shoe to bring down her high blood pressure. She walked off among the large oak trees and past the pretty St. Helena Island marshes. And she walked and she walked and she walked. When she returned home, she felt a lot better. But Little Muddy Waters, why, that boy had almost had the life walked right out of him. Mm, mm, mm. Grandma Waters took her shoes off and knocked them against each other while she stood on the porch. The gray Spanish moss fell on the wooden floor before she padded barefoot inside her house. A few minutes later, she heard a scuffling noise on the porch. She peeked out the front door and saw Little Muddy Waters. He looked tired, like he had been squeezed into a very tight space, like someone had walked all over him, like he had done something he would never forget. Uh, Grandma Waters said as she rushed out to him. Respect your elders and do what's right, Little Muddy Waters. Now tell Grandma all about what happened. Oh, Grandma, he sighed. I hope you never put the mouth on me. I'm going to mind my manners. I'm going to respect my elders. I'm going to try to do what's right. Grandma Waters hugged her grandson and patted his back. That is so good to hear, Little Muddy Waters. But remember now, I love you if you don't, and I love you if you do. That's the truth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a joy. And this book came out in 1997.
Shout out to Mr. Ron Daise and Sara for reading your daddy's book. That story is forthcoming for all of us. It's going to be re-released for us all to enjoy because, baby, I need that on my kids' bookshelf. And I need it on my bookshelf. But wow, it's it's just a funny story because at first I know you were reading, so you didn't see the comments, but the comments were going off. I cannot believe he took his grandmama's hair and put it in the nest. Like no, little bird, you don't have to take it. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna go into like the whole story is just absolutely it's just you're like this the whole time. So such a captivating story. I have a question for the audience. Y'all kind of been answering a little bit, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. I want to know if Little Muddy Waters was your sibling or your child, how do you think you would have handled that behavior? Because that was a lot. You know, the Hoodoos were cringing. I could feel it through the chat. How would you have handled that? What would you have done, T? What do you think? Somebody take your hair out in the woods.
Yeah, I plead the fifth. I know I would not be proud of the things that I would do. The first thing that came to my mind is that scene from Insecure where Issa Rae just like dunks that baby down the hall. So you know, I don't need no kids right now. That's the life lesson I got from that.
My God, today I do have 2 young children, and T, you and Sarah both know how I'm always going through it because they're at that age. Little Muddy Waters is probably what, about 8, Sarah? Like Little Muddy Waters is older than my toddlers, so he really should have known better because they literally told him, I'm telling you what will happen if you do this, to teach you these things. And also that's exactly what he did, and that's really what kids do sometimes. So I'm not gonna get into the motive. I really think that it would be one of those days where I just have to sit and rock, because especially running back in the house and causing bad luck to fall upon us. Come on, Little Muddy Waters. It's really hard. Let's see what the chat is saying, because I see laughing emojis, so I know y'all going in. Yeah, he definitely learned. That was a masterpiece. Yeah, your daddy did that. He did that. It's an awesome story. Lori Me says, grandma better than me. Little boy would have to go live with somebody else. Foulette says, who needs scared straight when you got this? I know that's right. Brittany says, my grandma was always telling me I was hard-headed, but I would like to say I would not have taken her hair out the tray. I'm telling you, because some things you just don't do. Rory said, F that baby. Yes, Empress says, my people like to say, who don't listen gon' feel. That's right. And little Muddy Waters felt that walking around in his grandma's shoe. Yep, swoop. Sometimes you just gotta let a child learn that fire is hot. Absolutely. Now, I want to also ask you, Sarah, because you brought us a story that, one, is important to you because your daddy wrote it, and also this is a Gullah story, but it's also very Hoodoo. So because this is Hoodoo Heritage Month and also Gullah Geechee Heritage Month, I want to know, from your upbringing as a Gullah person and also in Hoodoo, how were these things, like, I guess, integrated into your life? Because obviously your daddy talking a whole lot of Hoodoo in this book. So I would like to know how you have, been integrating those 2 identities and how you see it like in the world today.
I love this question. This book, like his first book, Reminiscences of a Sea Island Heritage, which is also being re-released very soon, I think they just illustrate the overlap of Hoodoo and Gullah Geechee culture so well. And the first thing that comes to mind is not something that he mentioned here, but I just remember like stepping on a rusty nail and then him beating the bottom of my foot with a shoe to pull out whatever would be harmful to my foot. I also I don't know that I experienced packing the soap and sugar or spider webs, but it's in a cut, but it's something that I grew up with an awareness of. As I mentioned, my journey and reclamation of Hoodoo is relatively recent, but the more that I learn about it, particularly from books like Mojo Working, it's just how much, how intentional we have been with our survival, with our coming together to make something new because we must. And,
Mm.
and it's not necessarily like a conscious conversation. So I think there's similar conversations about the ways that hoodoo has been demonized and the way Gullah Geechee culture and language has been pathologized, and the ways these Africanisms that we have incorporated and evolved in relationship to the environment that we're living in and the oppressions and the systems we're either surviving or not. um, it's not like, hey y'all, let's create hoodoo, or hey y'all, let's be Gullah, but it's like, how are we gonna be here? And I love the way both of these practices show our brilliance and show our never ending connection to, often like, not just a home, like maybe a home that an ancestral home that we'll never know, but indicative of how we create that home wherever we are. We recreate that home within our natural environments. We recreate that home and that safety and solace in the ways that we speak and the rituals that we incorporate. And there's another piece I feel just about recognizing our magic and thinking that we need someone or a white person to validate it for us. Because I think since our ancestors have been using this technology, science has come about to say, well, yeah, actually, there are properties in like Spanish moss and spider webs that are healing in a way. And it's like, we knew that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And like, I'm glad y'all caught up, but what will it be for us to really revel in our knowing, to trust our knowing, to be
Wow.
able to slow down enough and spend time with nature, like we were both talking about with the other stories, and
Yeah.
yeah, gain that trust.
Mm. I really love that you talked about that because I feel like that is a perfect segue into this next question, which is like, for many of us, like myself, I can speak for myself, are very new to hoodoo, but not really. I, in my particular walk in my journey, I've been into this hoodoo thing for a couple of years now. And for some of us, this is brand new. For others of us, this is how we've been living all this time. But I want to ask, what is some wisdom handed to you? And I'm going to kick it to T first, and then we'll end with Sara. But what is some wisdom that's been handed to you from an elder that you later recognize as significant for your reclamation of hoodoo? Because Little Body Waters was growing up in all these ways and all these things that was hoodoo. Little Muddy Waters probably would not have called it that. Maybe Little Muddy Waters' grandmother may not have even called it that. But I'm just wondering, what has been the thing where now that you're a hoodoo and you have this understanding and connection with spirit in the land, it's like, oh, this has always been here. T, do you have something that comes to mind?
Um, yeah, whew, I think when I was younger and my parents had more capacity and could be more present for us, they hadn't, the years, the years of raising little muddy waters hadn't gotten to them yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I vividly recall the way my mother didn't, put that, like, curse me into a ball of moss. But I remember when she told stories, there was a way that sometimes she told me stories about me, stories about a life I hadn't lived yet, or stories that were encouraging me to see myself as beautiful. And sometimes she would even draw pictures. I remember this one picture she drew of a ballerina, and I was taking ballet lessons. And she was like, look at the girl with the almond eyes, the dark almond eyes, and look at her beautiful face, and look at her beautiful arms, and look at her beautiful hair. And it was just a way of speaking blessings over me. And recently, a friend of mine who's a hoodoo who runs the Muddy Waters Apothecary shout out to Eli, sent me this song that said something like, sometimes you just have to encourage yourself, this gospel song, and or speak encouragement over yourself, and sent that to me like literally yesterday, the day before. And I was just like, I've forgotten how to do that. But I can remember being a child and being spoken over in that way. And sometimes the prayer or the magic is just stepping back and not speaking over what's in front of us or what we hope to see around us, but speaking over ourselves. So that's the most that's been the biggest hoodoo for me lately. That the best remembering I've had.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Sarah, does anything come to you, your reclamation of hoodoo over time?
I love that story, T. I feel like ancestor veneration has always been present in my family, and it's not something that we ever called that. But on Friday nights, we would have family worship, and it consisted of just like us naming things we were prayerful for, naming things we were grateful for, but also singing songs and calling the names of ancestors. And sharing stories about those folks. There's this one song that goes, "Jesus, when Jesus and the family, happy, happy home." And we would just sing that song over and over, but like replacing Jesus with a name, with a family member and an ancestor. And I'm told that from a young child, like I would be naming every ancestor I ever knew. Like they would be ready for the song to be over. And I'm just like, when grandma, and I see the significance of that now as I recognize my ancestors alive in me and in my family members and all around. The significance of saying those names, of bringing them more powerfully into the present, and also respect for elders for sure. Because we can I think and do frequently have conversations about how age doesn't necessarily make you an elder for sure. um, However, I'm very grateful for this, for being given the standard of respecting elders. It don't mean that I gotta like believe or do or even internalize everything that anybody says, but to honor and acknowledge this soul, this being, this person who very likely has experiences and insight that is valuable. And even if they didn't have experiences that was valuable, that they are valuable. I am grateful for that wisdom that is absolutely hoodoo. Like we need all of us. We need everybody on deck, and we lose so much with ageism, with just a disregard for the folks who have been here.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I love that y'all were elevating ancestors in your childhood. And it makes sense that that's a big part of your ministry now. And I think of how T does T Talks and reads these beautiful cards that they created, and how T is always speaking encouragement. Even if you never encounter T in real life or virtually, you can pick up this guidebook and you will receive that encouragement. And so y'all are living the things that were imbued and given to you. And is that not hoodoo? And so I'm just glad to be in y'all's company. That's just so impactful for me. And I could share more, but we have one more section to get through. We are moving forward with, for those who are still here, ghost stories. And I'm really excited because we are starting the first ghost story with a real one. T is going to share a real ghost story from T's life. T, take it away.
All right. Now, this isn't rehearsed, except maybe once some years ago. Um, yeah, but this happened to me. Um, yeah, my mother taught me when I was younger that in all the places I visited when I left home, school, church, wherever I went, nobody could love me like kin. Um, and when I thought that I had made a new friend sometimes, usually my mom could spot with her eye whether that person was truly a friend to me, even when I couldn't see it, because I think I was just a little romantic child and I just wanted connection. I knew as a child that love was inherently simple, but I didn't yet know the ways that the world made it hard. So when I got old enough and I fell in love, it felt very right. It felt very easy. It felt like a miracle, and it felt simple. And I followed that love to another country, and I lived in a house on Church Street. That house was near a crossroads, and truthfully, honest to its name, it was near many churches. But there was something about the house. There was something about the house that I couldn't put my finger on. The way that the doors would slam. The ways that when he left for work, specifically the door to the outside would open. And one day while I was out and he came home from work, there was a bird. There was a bird in the house that had come in through this open back door. And he was upset. I thought I told you to close that door. I thought I told everyone they need to lock the door. And it would have been enough. It would have been all right if it was just the doors, if it was the birds coming in to warn me. It would have been enough if it was just, stories of how there were little critters that got stuck in the walls. But there was one night when we were both asleep and something woke me. And I just felt its spite, that beloved spite, that Morrison spite. I just felt that this thing that had no love for me was in the room with us. But I was awake and he wasn't. And so I might as well have been alone. And that's how I felt every night when it would come and wake me up from sleep. And just this coldness would just move through my body, this despair. And I was in another country, and like my mother said, out in the world, far from home, they don't love you like kin. And so I had no community, and I had no people there with me. But I had begun to recall my ancestors, and I had begun to research our traditions, and I began connecting with hoodoos online. And I found a spiritualist who maybe some of y'all might know, because she sells a bunch of top tier oils. But Maisha, I gave her a call, and she said, there is something in that house. There's something with you. And here's what you need to do to get rid of it. And so I told him, I said, there is something in this house, and I know that you don't feel it, and I know no one else in this house can feel it, or hear it, or sense it. I know that when doors slam, there is a reasonable explanation in your mind, but there's not one I can feel in my body, and there's not one I can feel in my spirit. And I'm losing sleep, and I'm feeling terrified, and something is not right, and I know how to fix it, but you'll have to trust me. I'll have to do these rituals, and it's your house, so I'm letting you know. And he took my hands, and the man who loved me said, I don't believe you, but I can see that you are in pain, so we're going to do whatever this ritual entails. And in another land, in a place that's far from kin, the gift of sight, the gift I began to recognize as living with an awareness of spirits, it felt like a haunting. It felt like a curse, because with no one to explain it or validate it, but a gifted medium over the phone at 3 a.m. That was the real haunting. The haunting was that I could be hurt in ways that the person that I loved could not sense or believe. And so I say that love is simple, but the world makes it hard, and that was a world I couldn't stay in. We cleansed the house. The haint was gone. But little by little, that experience began to show me that I needed to return to the States. I needed to be with kin. There are mediums who say that when a spirit bothers you or tries to get your attention, especially a restless or unhappy spirit, it may be because it recognizes that you are gifted and you can give that spirit what it needs to rest, to pass on, to be elevated. But alone in a place where I was not believed and where my gift set me apart, as I said, it felt like a curse. And so I didn't help that spirit. I got rid of it. Like I wanted to get rid of whatever made me know it was there. And it wasn't until I came back to this land where my kin lived and saw and were gifted and survived. It wasn't until then that I began to work with spirit in a way that benefited us both. I saw them, they saw me, and other people living saw me, and I felt communal love. I think I'll leave that there. That's the story.
Wow, T. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That sounds. Thank you for sharing that. You are a masterful storyteller. Um, the details, um, the layers in that story. Because I'm thinking about your mother in the beginning and what she was saying to you. Um, Even in connection with what you just shared about your mother and the ballerina and the picture that she drew for you, and how she was building you up. And she was, in this story, using her sight. Um, and then soon you will have your own to deal with and to face. I don't even have any questions. That was such a moving story. It was, it feels less about the ghost and more about you feeling unseen, like you were the ghost, and how you moved through that and determined where you needed to be. It kind of calls back to Louis Alexander and Jack o' My Lantern, where you go to a place, especially Jack o' My Lantern, you go to a place where you think there's going to be a certain way. I'm going to be welcomed here. These are going to be this way, only for him to receive the door. And so you were in a place where, whew, it was going one way until you were faced with something very big that you had to determine, what am I going to do from this point forward? And who am I going to be from this point forward? You can't unsee it. You can't unknow it. You can't unfeel it. After, I think I do have a question. Sara, I don't know if you have a question either, but after you went through the ritual with your partner at the time and you knew that the spirit was gone, how did you feel?
Well, something that just occurred to me at the end of that story is that the ghost is gone. I'm gone. I don't live there anymore. And he doesn't live there anymore. So after that ritual, it really felt like each of us kind of discovered that we were meant to be somewhere else. And I think sometimes our magic has a way of answering our prayers in ways that we don't even know. What we pray for sometimes manifests as something Um, well, first of all, I have to name that Maisha said it was a trickster spirit. And so I almost feel like in getting rid of a trickster, we see the outcome was very unexpected as well. So it took time, but you know who is in that house now? None of us. And it's also worth noting that that's land that originally belongs to the Aboriginal, the Black Indigenous people of Australia. The land formerly known as belonging to Indigenous people who called it Narm. And those same folks within just driving distance of there have had their ancestral lands and their birthing trees torn down, which is something I felt. I felt like somebody had died. So it just, yeah, it's interesting how invoking that magic took took everyone who wasn't supposed to be there out of that place. But lets me know that our magic, our technology is powerful, and we are powerful. And what if we did that with the intention for returning the original land custodians' ancestral lands to them? And what if in healing what if in that attempt to heal or escape something for myself, I was able to do something unexpected? Like what are ways that we can use that for not just for ourselves but for others? So that's something that I'm thinking about.
I feel like that's what we're called to right now. If I think about Be Here Now, the South is a portal, and how so many people are returning to the South, Black people specifically, returning to the South. And when I talk to these people, there's like, I don't know. It's just something is telling me I need to be here. Something's telling me I need to go home. Or if they never lived there, or didn't, maybe they had distant relatives who lived there. I don't know. Something's saying I need to get to the Carolinas. I don't know. For some reason, I got to get to Alabama. Like, people don't know why they're going home to New Orleans, but Spirit knows. We are being called into different places. And I do think that it has a lot to do with this elevation of the land, of coming together so that we can heal ourselves, or as Sara says, we can heal ourselves backwards and forwards. That means we reach back to our ancestors, and we reach forward to the land, to each other, and to our future descendants. And so I feel like that's what was happening. I also feel like that was training for you, because people know we be talking tea. And you are a very powerful being, and you have faced many things, and I would say many trickster spirits since then. This is my first time hearing this story, but you have, I think, run across a lot of different trickster spirits, and now you don't bat an eye. They run from you. And it's interesting because they'll come cozy up. I'm thinking about Anansi. They'll come cozy up, and you'll be like, nah, nope, you gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta go. And so, but someone said in the chat, which I love, the trickster is the teacher. And so we're talking about trickster tales. And we say ghost stories, but these are spirits, right? Sometimes they lived human lives before, and other times they're just essences and entities. But whatever it is, you, T, in particular, that seemed like an initiation for you. And since then, we've seen you, and this happened before I even met you, but now, out of that same place in Australia is where we got the GMABBY Black Gold Linderman deck that people cannot stop talking about, that people cannot stop using, that people from celebrities who posted on their Instagram accounts, people who you probably would never meet in life, that you are touching with these tools. Like, so when we talk about, when whoever said that, I got to go and put that back on the screen, baby. Because when the trickster is the teacher, it's amazing how it was like, I'm chasing you out of this. It could be the house, the scenario, the situation, or rather you ran it out and then you left. It catapulted you to where you were supposed to be. and what you're supposed to be doing, which is making tools for us. And with that in mind, this is a good time, if you haven't already, check out T's upcoming deck, 52 Blues. We have 2 days to fund it. It's halfway there. I see a few people have backed it since we started. That's great. Share it. Let people know. If you can't put any money on it right now, that's fine. But you can send it to 5 friends who got money. You can send it to 5 people who can share it with their 5 friends who got money. Share it and let people know, because 52 Blues is our story. It's a piece of it. And as you can see from T's storytelling, somebody said you need to start a storytelling podcast. I second that. You can see from T's storytelling, all of that is in the deck. And we know, because when I pick up the deck, I feel your ashe. And my ancestors can identify with that. And many people have that same testimony. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We have one more ghost story before we end the night, and it will be read by yours truly. I would try to read like T would read it. This one is called Buried Treasure. And it reads, "It is said once a very rich man died, and his store was haunted, and his brother wanted someone to stay there at night, but everybody was afraid. Then he said that he would give $50 to any man to stay there for one night. A doctor said that he would stay there that night, and he went in and closed the door, took his newspaper to read. Now everybody was quiet, and he was reading away. He heard something walking on the doorsteps. Then he raised up his head, and the door flew open, and in came a cow with no head. And he jumped up and ran out the other door. When the owner of the store heard this, he said, 'I will give $500 to anyone that will stay here the next night.' Then a preacher said, 'I'll stay.' And the preacher went in and closed the door and took his Bible to read. He said to himself, 'I'm going to go upstairs.' And away he went. When all the town was still, he heard something coming in. He read on, but then he heard it coming up the stairs. He read on, and then it came to him. So he looked up and saw 4 men without heads with a coffin. They brought it to him and sat it down, and started toward the preacher. The preacher left and told the news. And when the owner heard this, he said, 'I will give $5,000 to anyone that will stay here for one night.' Then a poor man said, 'I will stay.' He went in and closed the door, and in a few minutes, he heard something coming in at the door. He was very much afraid, but he said, 'I will not run, but I will ask it what it wants here.' At this moment, the door flew open, and in came a man without a head and without arms. The poor man said, 'What do you want here?' And the man without a head and arms said, 'That is what I have been coming here for someone to ask me that. Sir, my money is down the hill, and if you come with me, I will show it to you. And you may have $2,000 of it, and I want you to divide the rest with my brothers.' And he did so." This story was from an informant named Jonas McPherson and recorded by A.M. Bacon. Whew. All right. My first question. This is for those in the chat and for you two lovelies with me. What details in the story stood out to you? What stood out? Anyone can start.
What stood out from this story was the ghost's expression of how long he was just waiting for somebody to ask him what he needed. I feel like it connects back to the conversation around Haint and the devil, and even T, your story. Thank you so much for sharing. So, like, and putting the two together, when you said your partner was like, "I don't believe you," that was so effing chilling.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was more chilling than the way you would describe the visitation. Although I know it was horrifying, it was as chilling as I imagine the people who were staying in this building were feeling when this headless person was approaching them. And I'm thinking of the experience of this headless person who was just waiting for someone to ask them. And I'm thinking of you and my own shared experiences of being in relationships with people who have me question my reality and what that feels like, how that can feel like not being alive. You know, questioning maybe nothing that I know to be real is real.
Oof.
And both stories just make me sit with our own responsibility, our responsibility to one another, our
Yeah.
responsibility to believe one another, our responsibility to question our fears.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, it is okay that I'm scared, but let me get more curious about it. Let me see if there's another story that I can tell myself about this feeling that I'm having. Because I love you describing, I know I'm talking about both stories. I love you describing how that was an experience, like initiation for T, and as it relates to telling ourselves a story about what we're experiencing. My mom does a one woman show about becoming Harriet Tubman, and Harriet Tubman would talk about whenever her heart would start beating fast, or her stomach would feel fluttery, she just knew that that meant God was talking to her and that she needed to slow down and listen. So thinking again of just the way we can feel when we don't know what's going on, and or there's literally like a harmful, unsettling spirit, um, for what it means to trust ourselves, what it means to trust our guides in our own spirits, what it means to show up and believe one another. Because even again, the way you told the story, it was like, I don't believe you, but I help you. So there's a way to take that, like, oh well, thanks, but also like, goddamn, and that again, thinking about hags, thinking about people who jump out their skin, think about people that slipping through keyholes.
Yeah.
There's just a lot that yeah, there's a lot of responsibility we have to one another. That's what's coming up for me in those stories. To the living and the dead, there is a lot of responsibility we have to one another.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to share some of the comments, and then T, I would love if you have an answer to share. I asked what stood out. Someone saying the math stood out. Someone says that it called back to what Sara said about tending to spirits' needs. Pi Universe says it's the desperation of the house owner versus the waiting of the spirit. Because the shop owner wasn't in there. I'm gonna pay somebody else to be in here. Um, yeah, Storyteller's book club. The fact that one of the ghosts just wanted to be acknowledged. Yeah, yeah. Limi says it was interesting to me how each time the spirit manifested differently in the story. Yeah. Then there is Swadade. I hope I'm saying that right. The addition of zeros to the 50, the hierophant, and the full, balancing one's sovereignty, knowledge, and I lost it, taking a risk in with the unknown. Come on, you know I love a tarot breakdown. You know I love that. It's storytelling tarot after all. Fula says, makes me think of how many ghosts we have around us that we don't acknowledge because of our own vantage points and fears. Oh, yeah, we're going to get into that. But T, I would love to know your thoughts. What stood out to you, and what, if you, like, I love the connections that Sara made between your story and this one. Did anything stand out to you in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I co-sign. Well, I don't co-sign because Sara came up with it. I just want to like claps for everything that Sara said and tying all of this together. I just love, like, I love that full circle moment. And I also, so what I have to add is just very small. It's just like, just thinking about the details of like these mutilated bodies, the mutilated cow, the mutilated person, and thinking about, where have you heard of a man who cut off his own head? And where have you heard of a cow that's cut off his own head? Like, these are evidences of mutilation, and thinking about how looking at the evidence of someone else's violence can terrify us. Who did the violence, and why are we terrified of the victims? And thinking about just how, like, just how we see like such a visceral response to just Black Americans in general. Like, you know, we step into a room and we change the spirit and the chemistry of the rooms that we step into, but also like our grief, our pain, our anger. Like, people, without even realizing it, will feel indicted by it, accused, threatened. Like they looked at this dead body and looked down and saw the knife in their hand. Like, this person was able to like stand in between that, in the middle of this spiritual conflict, and say, like, you know, I haven't harmed you, but maybe tell me about what did, who did, and maybe we could come up with a resolution. And just thinking about that, I still get scared when I encounter spirits, especially those that die violently. But this story gives me so much encouragement and so much strength, and this whole discussion we've been having over this evening. So I just feel really grateful to be here.
I've watched exactly one episode of Lovecraft Country, and it was the episode where the spirits were essentially elevated at the end. And the house was haunted, but the spirits, even in their unelevated state, were still warning them of danger. They were not the big bad. They were trying to warn the living of who the big bad actually was, and that they were actually captive. And that, I remember weeping watching that, because I was like, is that not like our dad? And this was at the very beginning of my hoodoo journey. So I wasn't even like, didn't know I was a medium, didn't know I could talk to them like that, didn't know they would talk to me like that. But I was so moved. Another thing that comes up is, I was telling Sara a few months ago, I read the incidents in the life of a slave girl, in which the narrator speaks about how she's trying to escape slavery, but it just wasn't safe. She kept having all these near misses. And so she ended up underneath the floorboards of her family's home, where she stayed for years. For years, she was right there. For years, she heard people searching for her, coming and badgering and abusing and harming her family about her whereabouts. She heard her children getting older. She heard them asking about her. Oh, you remember the time mommy said? She heard them turning years older. She felt the cold, and when it turned into the holidays, and she smelled the food that they were eating. And yes, while there were, like her grandmother, there were relatives who knew that she was there, but the thing was, we can't let the kids know. It was dangerous for them to know, because she didn't want to lose them. So she would rather suffer underneath those floorboards. And so when she would hear them grow, and she would hear her son's voice start to drop, he's growing into a man. And I thought about, wow, how does that feel as our ancestors, for those people who still think that ancestors are demons, as though they're not family members. How lonely that must feel, for them to be around for the holidays and there's no plate for them. For them to see us get years older. For us to see us have our own children without stopping to say, I miss granddaddy. How lonely that must feel. And so it's interesting, someone mentioned that ghost showing up in different ways. And we don't know. We could theorize about why it showed up in different ways, right? But I think that what was so loud for me was that these incredibly astute people started. Oh, the doctor, the rich doctor was like, I'll stay. Oh, the preacher's like, I'm gonna bring my Bible, I'm gonna stay. It was the poor man who said, I'm not gonna run, even though I'm afraid. And by the time the poor man got there, he'd already heard about the doctor running and the preacher man running. And you know what they say? Oh, the preacher man, the preacher man ran. That's supposed to be the one that has the most power, right? That's supposed to be the one that has the most spiritual authority. And the ghost ran up on him too. And he ran up out of there. The poor man was the only one who said, I'm not going to run. I'm going to acknowledge what's here. And it's so interesting because we've been having conversations on Twitter. The church girls against the tarot girls. The church girls against the astrology girls. And that's gender neutral, by the way. These conversations about what's valid, what's right, what's holy, what's demonic. But even in this story, we see that the power that the church has or could have, they lay aside. As a hoodoo, I know that my power comes from God and the divinity within myself and the ancestors in my line. And so when we elevate them, when we say their names, when we bring them to the forefront, I feel them in this room I'm in. When we call them and we give them what they ask for, just like the ghost in this story, he says, I have a treasure. I just want to give it to my living. Can you get this money to my brothers? And I will give you something. That's powerful. So when people say, Christians, you talking to demons, baby, but these blessings are flowing into my life. The way I'm protected on every side. What demon's protecting me? What demon is giving me blessings? What demon is saying, baby, you got to heal that? What demon is saying, oh, let me show you the ways. Let me show you the ways. What demon is saying, you better go out to that tree and pray? What demon is telling me those things? Are the demons not the ones shooting up buildings and ending lives and supporting and causing genocide? Are those not the demons? Hoodoo, as Sara said, is a reclamation. And we do this through ancestor veneration and elevation. So I want to say thank you to my ancestors. I want to say thank you to your ancestors, T, and to your ancestors, Sara, and to everyone who is watching this live and on the replay. We are here because of them. I don't care what your belief system is. You wouldn't be here without the people who came before you. And so we acknowledge them, even when we're fearful, right? Even when we're like the poor man who's like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what you're going to say. Only for even the unelevated to have a gift. How much more life and goodness and sweetness can they bring into our lives when we do say, I see you. I hear you. You don't have to be under the floorboard anymore, great grandma. Now you are in a place. Here, have this water. Receive this light. Take this food as a token of my remembering you, because when we remember them, they don't die. They're still alive. I just want to ask you, I guess you all, as a second to final question. How has ancestor elevation impacted your ancestral practices? Yeah.
Ancestor elevation has helped me understand more parts of myself. Um, I don't know. I don't know if this exactly answers the question, but I've been thinking a lot about both ancestor elevation and elevating our own spirits and being intentional about integrating our shadows and our past selves and all the versions of ourselves. And Zalani, another incredible hoodoo teacher, um, they talked about affirming that your body is a safe place for your ancestors.
Mm.
And that's something that I do every day now. I also affirm that my body is a safe place for every part of me.
Ashe.
And I think that those things go hand in hand. I can't remember exactly who it might have been. I don't want to misspeak, but a spiritualist that talked about when you discount your unelevated ancestors, you are also discounting parts of yourself that you have
Ooh.
learned to not bring in, or that you learn to pathologize, demonize, etc. And so, yes, elevating my ancestors does all that for me. It allows me
Ooh.
to accept myself. It allows me to see and understand patterns in my own families and the ways that we respond to one another and the reasons for doing so. Ancestor elevation allows me to have more grace for the living.
Ashe. Ashe. T, what about you? And then we'll move on to our final question.
So I keep forgetting that I'm here. I'm like in the audience, like, ooh, this is good stuff. Like, uh, ooh, yeah. Let me come into the room. Whew. So yeah, I was just sitting here listening to Sara, and it gave me some clarity around something. Um, the grandmother who passed a year before I began working on Grandma Baby's Black Gold Letterman. Um, like a year after she died, I began to elevate her and began to elevate her mother, and and then she came to me. I was standing in that house that I no longer live in Australia, or Narm as it should be called. I was standing in that house and I felt someone hold me, and I was alone. Um, Physically, and I felt someone hold me. And to my understanding, it was my grandmother thanking me, not because I had elevated her, but because I had elevated her mother, a woman who I had never met, and who I shared a lot in common with, actually, to hear my mother tell it. But my mother was a dark skinned, my grandmother was a dark skinned woman, and her mother was light skinned. And when she was made to live with her grandmother, she was told it was because her light skinned mother didn't want her. And then began this cycle of, like, the women in my family being distant or having some kind of conflict with their mothers. Their mothers couldn't love them directly, but they would love the next generation usually. We're good. My maternal line is good at being grandmothers. But it was hard for them to be mothers. And so hearing my grandmother tell me, thank you for uplifting, thank you for giving light, thank you for giving prayer to my mother. Didn't realize this was right before my Saturn return kicked off. That, like, my work, that sort of set me on this path of, like, healing that. And this whole time it's been, me about the court of grandmother spirits and about the grandmothers. But yeah, the light we give them, it somehow makes it through all the cracks, not the cracks that we name, not the cracks that we intend, but it comes in and it just fills in everything.
Yes.
And yeah, that veneration has helped me to reconcile the fact that I might not get what we have all wanted, but I can make sure that the ones that come after me don't struggle with that in the same way. Because of that first step. That was one of the first major things I did as a hoodoo, was just giving this woman I never met some light and some water and lifting her up. Yeah, so it's a little selfish. It's a little selfish that this is how it helped me. But in all the work that we're doing, like, it's helping way more than just us. We can frame it with this pro individualist mindset, but yeah, it's amazing what all our work touches, because we're all, everything is connected. Um, so yeah, thank y'all.
That's powerful. That's so powerful. Go ahead, Sarah. I thought you were going to say something. um, I'm very grateful for each of you being here tonight. And for everyone who's watching us live and on the replay, thank you for being here with us. We have so much more to say. I feel like we need to do a part 2 of this. There's so much more to say, and I just want to give thanks to the ancestors who started telling these stories and allow for these things to be recorded. We have to give thanks to Sora Neale Hurston, who is a big reason why any of us are even interested in these stories in 2023. And so we give light and honor and high praise to her as well. So we're coming to the end, and I want to ask each of you to share if there are any stories that you know of, or any recommended texts that people can go to if they're interested in hearing more about African American folklore, folk tales, anything you can think of. I do have some listed below in the description box, but if there's something else that you thought of during our conversation, please share.
I can't. I don't know what you've listed, but definitely Conjure Island and Root Magic by Eden Royce. Also Spook Lights 1 and 2, which is some Southern Gothic horror by Eden Royce, which is a lot of Black history and hoodoo magic. I mentioned Reminiscences of the Island Heritage by my dad, and you might be able to still get on Amazon, but that's about to be re-released. So yeah, and Mojo Working, which is just a
Yes.
profound and necessary text. Oh, Mama Day. Some of these things probably in the list, but you just gotta call them out. You gotta call
Absolutely.
out Gloria Naylor. Gloria Naylor.
Always lights of Glory Miller.
Ashe.
Always.
Ibaye.
Um, T, any resources or stories? I have Beloved because I know that's important for you. I do also have Mama Day listed.
Yeah, Beloved came to mind, and also the Federal Writers Project slave narratives. There's something iffy to me about calling them slave narratives,
Mm-hmm.
because these are people. But and this is after slavery has obviously been abolished, so they aren't
Mm-hmm.
slaves. They're
Right.
recalling slavery and its effects. But the slave
Mm-hmm.
narratives, there was a story I really wanted to find tonight about this woman wandering through the woods, hearing wailing and cries in the forest. Like, the slave narratives are very rich. And the slave narratives also inspired, Toni Morrison references them when she wrote about the people who could fly in Song of Solomon.
Yes.
And the other one, I mean, I definitely know that the Book of Negro Folklore is in there.
Mm.
Um, but I also, Mama Rue, like Mama Rue's Ancestral Musings, that podcast, and we've already mentioned Jujube. There's just something still that is just so timeless about having Black people carry on the oral tradition. I love to read, but something really puts me there when I hear things read.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing them recount stories and also share their own experiences just
Yeah.
really does something for me. And at the time I was living that story that I recounted earlier, I was listening to Mama Ru, and she was speaking about being around my age when she encountered a spirit haunting the space she was in. So that held me down. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are the resources I'd like to share.
Yeah. I have a resource that I didn't include, but I will after this broadcast for those who were particularly intrigued and moved by our conversations around elevation. Sarah Makeba Daise has a beautiful elevation prayer that I use in my practice that my spirits love. And I think you'll love it too. So if you're interested in elevating your own spirits and how that works, Sarah breaks it down and gives you a beautiful prayer to pray over your spirits. So I'm going to link that. It's a part of her Patreon, but this one is complimentary. So it's a gift. So print it out because you don't know how long it's going to be a gift. Keep it, save it, let it bless you and your spirits. That's definitely a resource that I wanted to share. Sarah and T, do you have any closing words for the people, or tell us how we can stay connected with you moving forward? Let's start with you, Sarah.
Well, first thing, you can find me at Sara Makeba, really everywhere. My Patreon, Sara Makeba, my website, saramakeba.com, Instagram at Sara Makeba. That's where you can find me. If you want to work with me more closely on some ancestor work or divination, you can look at my website. I just raised my prices, but I have a discount code, Hoodoo, and you can use HOODOOWEEN from now until Friday, November 3rd, and use the previous prices before they go up. And I don't think I have any final words. I'm very grateful to have been part of this conversation. I'm so honored to be in community with y'all. Y'all are both incredible cultural workers. And, there's so, oh, I also wanted to shout out Virginia Hamilton, Ibaye. Um, but yeah, there are so many heroes and grand figures in our life. Like we've named Toni Morrison, Gloria Naylor, and there are images of people in their cohort gathering together and doing consciousness raising. And so I just love that I'm in the cohort with y'all. I'm so very grateful for y'all ancestors and each of you. So thank you so much, Jada and T. And thank y'all to everybody in the chat. Thank you to my family who showed up. This has really been a joy.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm so glad to be in a cohort with both of you two brilliant genius hoodoos as well. T, could you let us know how we can support you and stay connected with you?
Why, yes. um, so I run GMABBY Apothecary. I apologize that I did not think that whole apothecary thing through when I came up with it, so spelling it is going to be painful for us all. But it's grandmababyapothecary.com, and it's on Instagram, grandmababyapothecary, Facebook, grandmababyapothecary. And if you want to shoot me an email, it's grandmababyapothecary@gmail.com, or alternatively, info@grandmababyapothecary.com. That's where you'll find me.
And I'm going to say it again. Back the deck. 52 Blues is T's new baby that we are I'm doing my mystical midwife thing, trying to help bring this baby in that T is carrying. So if you have loved what T has shared and you love one of T's other decks, you will absolutely love this one. So back the deck. There's 2 days left on the campaign, so we want to make sure that we can support T and make it happen. It does not happen unless we get it 100% funded. So get a couple decks. I know I backed a couple decks because I have one for me and one for clients. So you want to make sure that you make that happen. I want to thank both of y'all for being here, and every single one of you who's been here on live to be here for our first HOODOOWEEN. I think we might do this again though. I think we're going to do this again. I think that we're going to continue to share the stories. I also saw that someone say in the chat that we got to shout out Zolani. Zolani has a channel here on YouTube. I will make sure I link that after the broadcast. Listen, you want the basics on Hoodoo. You want some good teaching. You also want some good storytelling. Zolani is a wonderful source. And so I am so glad to call Zolani like my Hoodoo parent. And I think that you will enjoy it. It's a way to continue the conversations. I want to thank T and Sara again. Thank you all so much. And listen, there's more to come. If you enjoyed this program, make sure you like the video before you go. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you like divination and readings, that's going to be returning to the channel this week. Until then, we'll see y'all next time.